Lonesome Lance podcast. This is Lonesome Report. Um, April the 3rd. We're coming at you again. Usually we record on Wednesday. We actually did record on Wednesday. After we recorded, this is all going to be a lot about the Maude case. If you're familiar, we talked a lot about that as I was, then I looked something up as soon as we got done recording, and I went to AmericanUnwon.com. Keely Cavello had posted a new article with a bunch of new updates in it 17 minutes before I got to our website. And so I went back through that and I thought, Shad, we gotta add this stuff in. We can't come out with with this podcast without all this stuff. So it is Thursday now, and then at the end of the podcast, we're gonna put this is the mod case. Then at the end, you'll see everything we recorded yesterday. That's about everything, but except the mod case. This episode brought to you by Meitler Cattle. They will again be holding their annual bull and female sale April 12th. The auction will consist of 42-year-old bulls ready to go to work, and these bulls have been slow grown to help with their durability and longevity. In the offering, there will also be close to 150 commercial black and black white face commercial females. The offering is built around many generations of sound maternal genetics. Look them up on Facebook or study the bulls on DV auction. This bull sale is on April 12th. It's the Meitler family with Meitler Cattle. It's between Lucas and Sylvan Grove. I'm going to have all the links in the description of the catalog, DV auction, their website, everything. The Meitler Cattle are my favorite part about these catalogs, these bull sale catalogs, are the family history, and this one's a great one with the Meitler family. Their father, Gene, it says he ultimately created one of the great maternal cow herds in the country. He became widely respected for his knowledge in inbreeding and Bonsma. How do you say that, Shad? Do you remember?
Bondsma.
Bonsma trait selection. I've only read it, so I haven't heard it said that many times. But if it's a genetic line that they are into as the cattle industry chased terminal traits, show ring banners, and EPD numbers. Gene never wavered in his belief of breeding maternal cattle. And today, the owners of Meitler Cattle are Gene's two sons, Darius and Clint Meitler, and the cow herd is comprised of over 600 horned Hereford, Angus, and
Wow.
Black Baldy cows, both spring and fall calving. So that's what you're going to find at that bull sale if you're looking for some slow grown 2 year old bulls. They're going to have Hereford, Angus, and some F1 black white face, and what Darius called his pride and joy were the F1 black baldy commercial pairs, heifers, and breeding females. So check them out, April 12th. All the info in the description.
Plus, they're beautiful. I
Beautiful
mean, I,
animals.
I mean, I looked at their photos online, and they are big, beautiful, nice. I love a Hereford cow.
And the
Takes me
best
back to
part that we'll
the old
always talk
days.
about for all of our advertisers is they are people who believe in independent ranching, family-owned ranchers, and
Definitely
liberty,
freedom
freedom,
makers.
all that stuff. They want to back us because of our messaging. We didn't reach out to them; they reached out to us, and that's the best kind of
Yeah,
advertisers to have because they kind of believe in what we're doing, and so support the people who support you. If you're a small producer or any sort of producer, and you want to continue to see rural America thrive, support the
that's
people
right.
that are supporting it, and that's the Meitler family. Um, to get
Good luck
into
to them.
talk about a great ranching family, we'll talk about the mod case. And Shad has been integral in. He's really been pushing this thing, and he knows most everything about it. So I'll let him talk about it.
Well, I'm not sure I know everything about it because it is a complicated case, but to go back on the whole issue is Charles and Heather Maude, who is a very, very young ranching couple, a generational family who has been in the community of Caputa, South Dakota for many, many generations. Was, a year ago, almost a year ago in June, charged with theft of government property over basically just a fence line being off of the survey. Of course, this was Forest Service land, approximately 25 acres, that really had little to do with any kind of encroachment or anything else. Apparently, what happened was an anonymous hunter saw a no hunting sign on this fence line that the Maude family deeded land shared with their Forest Service allotment in this Buffalo Gap National Grasslands. And he turned them in to the Forest Service. And so, uh, I mean, I don't think much was thought about it.
Well,
Um,
just a second.
yeah,
Just so people understand, an anonymous hunter saw
yeah,
a no trespassing sign on a
yeah,
fence that had been there for longer than any of us have been alive, right?
correct.
Like, and he decided to call the Forest Service because he thought that that fence was in the wrong spot or that he
Yeah,
should be able to trespass on an
yeah,
area that he had no, right? Like that,
yeah,
go on.
exactly.
Just so
That's
people
exactly that's
understand
exactly
how this
what happened.
started.
And nobody even seems to know who this hunter is, or even if there was a hunter. But the Maude family has been on this ranch for 114 years. They have had no infractions in 114 years with the Forest Service. None. They are, even to this day, right now, today, they are in good standing with the Forest Service. And so after this complaint from the hunter come in, I'm not sure what date that was, but on March 29th, 2024, a Forest Service employee that has now become known as a very big bully, him and a Forest Service patrol captain by the name of Jeff Summers. This Forest Service employee's name was Travis Lunders, is Travis Lunders. They showed up at their house and wanted to talk to him about to the Maudes about this fence line not being on the right survey line. Well, we all know that even in my country, the survey lines on deeded land. I know on our south end, it's right on the right point, and on the north end, there's a couple that are probably 40 foot off. Well, I think this one is like a foot, right? And so these two Forest Service employees showed up at their house. They talking about this, and Charles and Heather said, "Hey, let's get it figured out, and let's do some common sense land trading. Let's extend this. We'll get it fixed. We'll use our common sense. No problem at all." So that was the agreement, kind of with the Forest Service. Then in May of 2024, the district ranger, a gal by the name of Julie Wheeler, um, and Travis Lunders again, come out and said, they wanted to talk about maybe trading this private land for some Forest Service land. Um, it was it was kind of just a good conversation, right? This is the way I understand it. Um, but in that conversation in May, Travis Lunders had told them that he had been out there as individually on their private property and the Forest Service property surveying himself. Well, he's not a, licensed surveyor, but he was out there looking, that's fine, whatever. But the Maude family asked him very nicely to, and they said, when you come onto this property, we want notified that you are coming across our private property to get to this 25 acres of Forest Service land. Well, apparently, and I don't think that's unreasonable, Jim. I just don't. I think that that's respectful in every way. He doesn't have control. Well, so time went on, and in May 6th, I think, Travis Lunders brings a survey crew out to survey. Now, I don't know what authority they have to survey, but I do know this: when there's a buyer and a seller, there needs to be a third party survey, right? But he didn't have that third party survey. It was just a crew from the Forest Service, and they
They
did
were
their
they were
survey.
Forest Service surveyors
Well, I'm not sure about the crew,
because
but
yeah,
he was heading up the survey. Well, If he's heading up the survey, the mods knew nothing about this crew. They knew nothing about the survey being done. He just was doing it.
Yeah.
And therein lies the problem, right?
And the reason a lot of these lines aren't exact and perfect is because surveying costs a lot of money.
Well, not only that, but when they were surveyed originally during homestead days or before, things were primitive
Well,
back then. They didn't.
I'd heard they started out like a lot of property lines in that kind of country would be, corners would be marked with a pile of rocks
Absolutely. That's the
during
way
the
it is in my
surveys.
country.
And then
Yeah,
some of them never got an actual pin put in or a stake or any of that. They just fences got put up. And I mean, this fence, they said 1906, right? That's what
correct.
Keeley's article said.
That's right.
So that property line's been there since 1906. So
The the way I
119 years.
understand it. Yep, that's right. So, it's kind of crazy. And, back then in the old days when they were surveying all this country, they would like, I needed a fence surveyed in Colorado on our ranch a couple of years ago. And I called a survey man and he said, there's no way I can do it cheap because the last survey on that piece of land or in that section township was from 1878. And I'm like, 1878, there wasn't even anybody here. And he says, yeah, I know. They're just rocks. That's all they were. Well, there's no rocks in my country. We couldn't find that. So he said, it's going to cost you a lot of money. And I said, I kind of know where it is. But anyway, to get back to the Maude family problem, Travis Lunders and his survey crew never even notified them that they were out there surveying. Well, you have to have a third party that everybody agrees on to survey, right? And so time goes on, and they talk to Ranger Wheeler about the survey, and uh, she she suggested that the issue was not the survey boundary, yet it was an unauthorized use instead of a boundary issue. Well, that was the first time they'd heard of that. Okay, so then in June, everybody got a hold of Senator Round's office and said, "Hey, let's have a meeting to get this rectified."
So this is
And
just a couple questions that I feel like
yes,
people might have right now. Where's all
yes,
your information coming from? I feel like we should be clear about that.
this is a public letter to the Secretary of Agriculture from the family.
Okay. And this describes what they are going through in this letter.
Correct.
Yeah.
Correct. Yeah.
And so there's something else I was going to ask. I can't remember what it was. Go ahead.
So anyway, they
All right.
Senator Round's office wants to have a meeting about this with the Forest Service, and apparently Ranger Wheeler and Travis Lunder's calendars don't match up to have this meeting. Okay, so after that, they couldn't arrange this meeting with Senator Round's office, everything just went quiet. Stopped total communication. Nobody was talking to anybody. The mods were pushing, couldn't get anybody to respond to them. And then on June 24th, 2024, Travis Lunder shows up unannounced on the Mod Ranch and serves them with indictment papers separately, charging them with theft of government property, a potential of 5 years in prison per person, plus a $250,000 fine per person. And with them being charged separately, they cannot talk about the case together or amongst each other. He was armed. It wasn't in tactical gear or anything like that, but he was armed when he showed up to serve them in their indictment papers. Um, they were really, honestly, they were just blindsided. And, I know that the mods wanted to bring out a common sense solution on this, using the Small Tracts Act, trading land, putting a new fence up, whatever it may be. But that just has fallen on deaf ears. And of course, this happened, under the Biden administration, which we know about the 30 by 30 and all of these public-private partnerships with ENGOs and NGOs. And we kind of know where that administration wanted to go. And so all of these complaints fell on deaf ears in that administration. And So far, we haven't had a lot of action with the new administration, but we don't know if they know about the case or where they're at, if it's been presented to them. This falls under the Forest Service, U.S. Forest Service, which is under the Secretary of Agriculture, which is under USDA. And so I as a property rights advocate, I don't know Charles and Heather Maude personally, but I've had a lot of, great things have been said about the Maudes. People say they're upstanding community people. I know they're not very old, and in their youth, they were high achieving, very high achieving young people involved in FFA, 4-H, Farm Bureau, give back to their community. I think Charles Maude was a star American farmer. He was a star state farmer in FFA. They put a lot of community gatherings together. They sell, hog and beef or pork and beef into the farm to table movement. And they're just very, very well respected. They have these two young kids. This family is under enormous pressure.
Yeah.
And this month they go to trial.
Right.
The time is of the essence.
And so to
And
hear all
so,
this story, like when I very first heard this story, this came out months ago, and I'm assuming a lot of people are probably thinking there's got to be more to it, right? There's got to be
right.
more because that's what I thought too at the
That's
same
what I
time.
thought.
Like there's got to be more to this. This can't be this cut and dried. But as I have looked into it, and like you said, I've talked to people in the community and talked to people who know him, and I've like my question is, is this Charles the kind of guy that's gonna be a big pain in the butt for for how there's people, they're like somebody shows
Is
up and you can
Yeah.
go to hell and get off my place
Yeah,
kind of guy. And
exactly.
everybody I've talked to has said no, he's easy to get along with, the same with the whole family and everything. Um, and then I got to thinking, well, when I started first heard about this carbon pipeline in South Dakota, and what they came out with and said was that there's armed security guards with no permission or never asked for permission or anything, and they just showed up on people's property, started going through buildings, and I was like, well, there's got to be more to that. That can't be true. But then you see
Yeah.
the video, and it's actually, I mean, there's a video of them doing that.
Oh,
Um,
there is a
and
quote by Travis Lunders that said he told a private property owner, "I can come on to your land and survey anytime I want to."
Right.
No,
Yeah.
he
I mean,
can't.
that's what the article which we'll link to that came out yesterday. And there's a lot in there. One of the things that gets referenced in there, because I think, to try to see both sides of this or kind of where are they coming from. And there's an article that was in the Capital Press. The only really thing ever kind of defending this is some article in the Capital Press, which apparently is an ag news website. But just to give you a little taste of what that is like, they talked to this lady. I think, well, their name's Char. I'm not sure who they are, but they said, by definition, because you're leasing land, there's going to be tension. Um, that sentence makes no sense. Like that is
None.
leasing land does not define tension.
Exactly.
That is not the definition. That just to show what that article is. And it said this is said by Char Miller, a professor who studies the West's environmental history at
There
Pomona
you go.
College in Claremont, California. So somebody is writing this article about a land dispute in South Dakota, and they think the best person to talk to is a professor who studies the West's environmental history from Pomona College in Claremont, California. I mean, that gives you a good idea of who these people are that are trying to defend this government overreach.
There's a lot of accusations coming from that other side that cannot be proven because there's no paper trails. And, the Forest Service and all of these government agencies are supposed to keep track of all of these happenings through a paper trail. And
Yeah,
they cannot come up with any proof that any of these things, one of the things was that the mods were aware that this could turn into a potential issue 4 years ago. Well, if that's the case, where's the paper trail, right? Uh, According to the neighbors, that those are all lies, and they've spent many years being bullied by the Forest Service. And once you come out, with Keely Cavello's second article, which was both of them have been phenomenal, and she interviews the neighbors, we know that, there's pretty much a problem there. And we've talked about, as property rights people, we've talked about for many years, when they started with the American Prairie Reserve in Montana, I told them the World Wildlife Fund was putting together a program in Western South Dakota, much like the American Prairie Reserve. And I told them, you guys have to watch that. They're coming after this South Dakota land. And this is exactly what happened. And, the World Wildlife Fund was bragging about public or these partnerships with ranchers, right? And it turns out that they're not ranchers at all. They're people that are buying up the land in the name of conservation and then partnering with these ENGOs. And we know about the Center for Biological Diversity, their wildlife corridor map that came out in 1993, which has again come out in the last couple of years. And so people were starting to wonder, is there some sort of wildlife corridor? What is the overreaching issue here?
Well, people
And
in the neighborhood already know, right? Like
yeah,
that's what had came
absolutely.
out in this Keeley's article was that they are close to a corridor in the Buffalo Gap National Grasslands,
That's
once
right.
scoped for expanded wilderness protection, where some locals believe the government wants to eliminate the grazing leases and replace cattle with free-range bison. There's a guy, Dan O'Brien, founder of Wild Idea Buffalo Company,
Yep.
which if you followed me, like this climate smart commodities, all this kind of stuff, there's huge government grants available for this kind of BS. Like if you can come up with your carbon sequestration and all of that stuff. And so this article states Dan O'Brien, founder of Wild Idea Buffalo Company, is located just down the road from the Maudes. He has received glowing media attention for his climate-friendly bison program, featured in outlets such as Men's Journal. His partners include Patagonia. Neighbors describe him as a professional grant writer, and they that
Absolutely.
just this is my me talking now, but that is something that is in the agriculture world becoming more and more common. These people who have an endless stream of money because
Yes.
they've researched how to get these government grants, and so it's taxpayer money just flowing into their
Yes.
operation.
And most of
Um,
them are far left liberals,
right.
um, that understand it. When they said that he was a partner with Patagonia, I
Yeah.
my ears perked up immediately. I have been trying to alert. The popular thing is to wear a Patagonia hat or a coat, and for a long time, that's Patagonia is not our friend.
Right. Yeah. Yeah, but everybody in this article, she talks to a lot of the neighbors and family friends and people from the actual community who all say the mods are great. And a couple of the really interesting points I think the article brought up was that Capital Press article talks about an email. And according to Heather's mother, there was not the Forest Service has not provided any emails. Like they haven't seen them. Um, Heather's mother, Randy Hamilton, calls the Forest Service statements all lies. Where's the documentation for the statements made by the Forest Service and published in Capital Press? She says, why aren't elected officials demanding proof to back the Forest Service statements? Um, and I agree with that. Like, where are the elected officials? But also, um, she also brings up a great point that both Heather and Charles are under gag orders. They can't even
Yeah,
talk to each other, and the
even with each
Forest
other.
Service is putting out this article.
Yeah,
How can one side be under a gag order and the other one isn't?
exactly.
Everything
Exactly.
about this whole thing just stinks to high heaven. And the fact
Well,
that,
and
go ahead.
yeah, in Keeley's article, she talks about this um, Frank Bloom, who has ranched in South Dakota since 1916, and they have this place near that actually is a fence line neighbor with the mods, and he says we've got the same issue. The only difference is that the what would it be? The district attorney hasn't filed charges against them yet. And I would say that's because of this uh, Maude case, maybe. Who knows, right?
Hmm. Yeah.
So, but
Mm.
Scott Edoff went in years ago, went to Washington D.C. to fight against this designation in this wilderness area, and they kind of got it put off for a while. So there's been something boiling here for a long time, and all it was a land grab. There's always ulterior motives, and we know with the Biden administration, I don't care what side of the aisle you are, the Biden administration wanted these land grabs, and they've happened all over the United States. And this is why we have to speak up now to try and help this family. I mean, if we're really going to get families back on the land, we got to do the right thing, and even even Secretary Rollins, which this is her time to shine in rural America among independent producers and Trump voters. She says in a quote that I read this week, she says, "We will also acknowledge that federal government is not always the best solution, and we will look forward for ways to restore more power to you, the local leaders who know your communities better than anyone in Washington, D.C." So we need to
And this
back
is it
up
for
what we're
her. Like
saying.
this is the opportunity.
Yes,
We've done a Brooke Rollins report every week on here,
yes,
hoping to see something, I guess. And she has done, I was saying earlier, what she has done has been good things. Like she hasn't done anything like horrible, which is what we could say about all preceding USDA secretaries, it seems like. But she's done the obvious things like ending, like there was some sort of grant for transgender farmers from South
right,
San Francisco, I guess,
right.
and just crazy stuff like
She
that
got
where
rid of
she's
DEI in her
yeah,
agency. I mean, I really think, with her history of being a freedom fighter in these two organizations that she ran, that is positive, and it gives us something to look forward to. But it's also now a time where she can say, okay, here's proof in the pudding. We
right.
are going to restore power to the American people on the local level. We are going to oversee corruption. We're going to end corruption like this on these federal agencies. We're going to end the bureaucracy, and we're going to do really what's right. And so I have faith that she is going to do that. We'll see. I hope it comes sooner than later because this trial date is coming up quickly.
Yeah. But I mean, yeah, and this is it. This is her chance. This is her
Yeah,
opportunity to show us who she is. And this is
yeah,
everything that she's talked about. She just did a
yeah.
full podcast on PragerU. I listened, and it's all faith and family and agriculture and
Yes,
getting back to the roots of everything. And this is it. Like, and I feel like this case also defines the Biden administration ag policy. If you
absolutely.
have studied climate smart commodities, how they viewed ranchers, how on the first day his 30 by 30 executive order was, the goal was to take land out of production. Everything that they kind of went through in that administration was kind of an attack on private property rights if you really looked into it. And this is their Department of Justice that is bringing these charges. And so right now the Trump administration and Brooke Rollins and everyone involved, Department of Justice, everyone has a chance with this case to um, show show what their administration is going to be like. Show that they're going to, do what they said during their
Follow
campaign.
through on their word.
Yeah, yeah. And show that they're going to be on the side of independent ranchers and private property rights and
Yeah.
all of those things. Like this is the perfect opportunity. Dismiss the case, you know, move on. Support this family that holds all these same values that you campaigned on. Um, and
One
fire
thing,
this jackass
yeah,
who's
Travis
doing this.
Lunders. Yeah,
That's the other thing about this article that came out. We talked about this yesterday and we didn't have this information, but there's a number of neighbors who say that he has already harassed them,
yeah,
and I think it's really interesting if you've been involved in any of these, in any of like workforce or organizational confrontations, a lot of times when you go over somebody's head, that's when they really get pissed. I mean, I've had, if you go to somebody and you don't it doesn't work out with them and you go over their head. And so from what you're saying, the mods met with the Forest Service. They realize that they have a serious problem here or something. So then they went to Senator Rounds. Senator
Well, and I
Rounds,
think
is that
that's
right?
right.
And
That's right.
Senator
But I
Rounds'
think
office said, we want to talk with them. They said, we're not talking to you. And they brought an arrest warrant.
they had a meeting. They talked to Senator Round's office, and Senator Round's office said, "Let's set up a meeting." They had a date set, and the U.S. Forest Service says, with this lady named what was her name? Julie Wheeler and Travis Lunders could not fit it into their schedules. So the meeting never took place. But the
Right.
retaliatory part of this, Jim, is when they asked Travis Lunders to his face to please inform them when he was walking or driving across their property to get to this National Grasslands Forest Service allotment, which is 25 acres. If he did not want to do that, then he could walk down the riverbed to do this and to get to that acreage. And that's when everything just went silent. It fell silent, and I feel like he thought, "I'll show them who's boss." And
Hmm.
that's when the charges
We've all
came.
dealt with those kind of people.
Sure,
But
we
the
have,
other
but
thing about the Senator Rounds deal, it's like they went to their one person who is supposed to be, I mean, we all have state senators and a state government also, but they're dealing with a federal agency. So they went to a U.S. senator who was elected by the people,
that's
and
right.
he went to the bureaucrats and said, we need to set up a meeting. And they said,
Right.
we don't have time for you.
That's right.
So they don't have time for the person who represents the people,
That's right.
the
And this is and
bureaucracy. And that goes back to that's Joe Biden administration
Well,
101.
let's talk about this. This is really important right now because we have people even in this new administration that are pushing public-private partnerships, and this is the result of a public-private partnership, the infiltration that has taken place into our government. Public-private partnerships cannot be utilized in a capitalistic free society with any kind of fervor.
And
You can't do it. This is the result of public-private partnerships between the Forest Service, the World Wildlife Fund, between the Forest Service and the Nature Conservancy. This is what happens because they get these ideologues from these NGOs or NGOs, and they put this money into the government bureaucracy, and then guess who influences everything? And that's what you're seeing right here.
and we've talked a lot about public-private partnerships, and one thing I think that needs to be remembered, Brett reminded me of this, is we need to, every time we mention this, we need to explain why these public-private partnerships exist and why they're a huge problem. And the reason is because the public side of the partnership can do things the government can't do. The government side of the partnership can do things that the public can't do. So in this case, when you have these environmental groups that want this land and they say harass these people, they have a government outlet. They can't harass these people as a public, as a private company or private individuals. So they're partnered with the government who can and who
That's
can go
exactly
straight to
right.
the Department of Justice and bring these charges. And
This is
that's the
what I
problem with public partnerships in every aspect.
Absolutely. Absolutely. And this is what my presentation that has been seen all over America, the war on beef, is all about. The very bottom of this of the war on beef is property rights, personal property rights. And so in order for them to get control of personal property rights, which is total control of everybody's life in production and consumption, they have to have these public-private partnerships. And they are really a pathway to hell for independent thinking and independent production. The whole thing is Scott Edoff said in that article that came out yesterday, he said it's communism. That's absolutely the end goal of this is communism, communal control of the land and its resources. That's what this is. It's
Yeah.
it's an ideology, right? And so that's what if they don't rectify this case, if charges are not dropped right now under this administration, this case is a precedent setter for anybody that has any kind of state or federal land leased or land within their deeded land all across America. This is a precedent setter, and this needs to be dropped right now. If President Trump, Secretary Rollins, Pam Bondi, all of them are going to preach freedom and liberty, we're going to do freedom and liberty, promote freedom and liberty in under justice, under the law, then they have to act on this case. This is their time to shine in rural America, in mega America, in productive America, in ranching America, and all things agriculture. It's right now. We have to get these charges dropped. And if the Forest Service is allowed to run over these people and anybody else that they want, there is going to be a war out west. And you can't just make stuff up. You can't make stuff up because you want somebody's allotment or their piece of land. I've been through this with the Nature Conservancy, and it will drive you insane. These people are relentless. They're corrupt. They're crooked. They have an agenda, and you don't matter as an American, as a freedom lover. You don't matter. You don't matter. What matters is that they have control of the land and thereby controlling all aspects of any kind of production and consumption. This Scott Edoff was right. It's communal control of land and natural resources. That's what it is. And so right now, again, is Secretary Rollins' chance to uphold what she says, and I think she will. I think she will. We're going to keep putting the pressure on the federal government to drop these charges right now. They have to
Right.
be dropped. These people
This is
can't
a
go to
layup.
prison.
We can all talk about tariffs and prices and immigration and all that kind of stuff and not agree, but this is a layup. This is a wide open layup, and you
Agree.
can either take it or you can leave these people out to dry. So,
If Secretary Rollins would step in and take leadership of this issue and get it to Pam Bondi, it's at the DOJ. I mean, I'm not putting this all off on Secretary Rollins, but Secretary Rollins needs to have 100% vast knowledge. She needs to get on an airplane and go fly and see the Maudes, and then go over to the district office and see the district
yeah,
office
there
of the
could be
Forest Service.
nothing, no greater. She's on a media tour right now. There could be no greater photo op than
This would
show
be a
up
great time.
in the Mods driveway and say,
Agree.
"We are so sorry. We're dropping these
Agree.
charges. We're going to work this out." You know, um, I mean that would go into everything that she's trying to promote
Yeah.
instead of going to these corporations and ethanol plants and all this stuff that she's been doing this week. Show up to an actual rancher
Well,
family
Jim,
who
and
believes in freedom and stand up for them.
all of that is good. And all of that has a theme in American agriculture. Those are all important issues that have to be addressed. And I'm all for addressing that. But if we have government bureaucracies that have been overridden and infiltrated by ideologues that are flexing their muscles, that have no rule making power, and they can do this to an individual family who has done nothing wrong, they can do it to anybody. And when that freedom is taken away from producers on the land, then you don't have freedom anywhere in the United States of America. It will be a domino effect across the land that gives these unruly bureaucrats power to do whatever they want to do unchecked. They don't have this power. We, the people, give them the power. They forget that they're working for us. But if Secretary Rollins and President Trump and Pam Bondi don't address this and drop all of these charges now, then what does that say for individual liberty in the United States? It says it has no value. That's what this is about. It has no value. And the value of individual liberty starts with property rights, whether it's 25 acres of an allotment that you own in the Buffalo Gap grasslands, or if it's your neoprene jacket that helps you go fishing out on the sea. It's all about private property. And that's what we have to make sure we defend and uphold is our rights to own property.
And so what everyone can do is bring this, bring Shad's letter. Shad has a letter on Facebook that's been shared a lot. Share it as much as you can.
Absolutely.
I'm going to try to clip this into something that's easier to share on social media, but you can share this video, and just get this information in front of as many people as you possibly can. One of the quotes that sticks out to me, that Edoff said that they thought Charles and Heather wouldn't fight. And I kind of feel like they also think rural America and the agriculture community wouldn't fight either when this kind of stuff happens. And so we have to show them that we will. And that's the only way to stop this kind of crap. Moving on to happier things.
Talk
We
to
never
me.
talk about happy things.
Talk to me about some happy things.
I had Brooke Rollins update down, but I feel like we've already. I guess she
Listen, I
showed up
don't
at
want, I
my
don't want,
local
go ahead.
ethanol plant. Like I saw she was like, I'm on my way to
Yeah.
Iowa. And then I tried to look up where she would be. Not that I would like go or whatever, but I was like, oh, I
Yeah.
wonder if she'll be around. And then my mom texts me. She's like, Dad was unloading grain and Brooke Rollins showed up at the ethanol plant that we unload at.
Mm,
And so that was interesting. And the
that's
one thing
nice.
I found interesting, so she has a picture of her opening the trap on a grain truck. And this ethanol plant is new. And all these comments are like, well, you just plugged the leg, which I'll tell you, you can open both traps as wide as she does, and you're not plugging that leg because I've done it. People are, everybody has a smart comment, but you think the ethanol outfit's going to stand there and let her just open that up and plug the grain leg? Whatever. I met with Iowa stock growers, our little bunch. And one thing I came out of that deal with, there is one of the guys there, and this doesn't have anything to do with the association or whatever. It's just talking. He said he knows a farmer that has around 15 different entities for collecting subsidy payments. I
Oh
mean,
yeah.
I think that is something in the future we really need to get after. The subsidies aren't the problem, it's the abuse that's the problem.
It's the
Well,
abuse.
I shouldn't say that because this guy who was telling me had a point too. The reason abuse exists and abuse will always exist is because the program exists. As long as the program's there, there's going to be abuse. But one real easy way to do it is start to police how many entities exist under one organization. And what we're talking about is one farm will have 15 different LLCs or sole proprietors or however they. And so when what we talked about last week, they send out these payments that are capped at 250,000. Well, that farm, if they have enough acres, could get 250,000 15 times
Yep.
all in one. So
Yep.
there, and that is where the main abuse of the system exists, I believe, in the
No, I agree
subsidy.
with you. There is a
And
ranch north of us in Colorado that when I was a kid, it was incredible producing cattle ranch, and the original founders of the ranch, of course, died. It sold off, and then all of a sudden, some wheat farmers buy the whole ranch, 25,000 acres, and plow it up. When I was a kid, and it has changed hands through the years. At one point, the Chinese own it, and then now now a family owns it, and they put it, somebody over the years put it back into the CRP. But then on top of that, they found every government program, conservation program, wildlife program, reintroduction program, whatever it was, through the USDA, and they put all of these programs on this ranch uh, through 12 different family entities. And I heard at one time they were drawing over 700 grand a year on this ranch that produces nothing.
it just makes the big get bigger. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah,
if
we
you're a
can't compete
farmer,
with it.
I don't know how, small farmers aren't able to come up with 15 different
Right.
entities. It's
That's
the
right.
gigantic place and the only ones that would want to are the ones that can claim the acres. So if you're doing
There's
10, 20, 50,000 acres,
right.
well, then you can claim all kind. The way to not get capped on your because of these payments are coming out as per acre payments. The way to
Right.
not get capped is to keep creating entities, and you go into all those programs. I just opened this up. This was getting kicked around the drovers. This is Farm Journal. Save the Sandhills.
Save the sand hills.
November, December. So this has been kicked around for a while, and I just opened it up this morning. I was just like, I wonder what's in here, and I always look at the ads. Very first ad, well, first one is, of course, pharmaceuticals. In the front, we have a full page ad here. Don't let 20 billion for farmers disappear. This is a full page ad which costs thousands of dollars
Yeah,
to put in
thousands.
this magazine. It's investinourland.org. Hardworking farmers are lowering input costs and increasing yields through USDA conservation programs. And it lists all these conservations: ASEP, CSP, EQIP, RCPP, Regional Conservation. Program funding is at risk. Learn more at Invest in Our Lands. So when you have these things, guess who's promoting Invest in Our Lands? It's those giant farmers that are sucking at the tit of the government because they're creating all these entities to game the system. We are just pissed off today. This mod thing has got.
Well, the mod
But then
deal's
I opened
really
that up and I'm like, oh, because I heard about that entity deal yesterday. And I couldn't believe like 10 to 15. But I bet you there's a lot of people that have three or four, you know, a lot of big farmers, 10,000 acre farmers will have three or four entities.
well,
I'm guessing.
there's two issues with this. Number one is the honesty and integrity. We are supposed to be
Right.
the leaders. The people of agriculture are supposed to be the leaders of honesty and integrity, and we wonder why people don't trust some of us, right? Because of that. And number two, it makes it unapplicable or for the small guy to be able to compete on any level. And so that's what when you say the big get bigger and the small can't compete, that's just the way it is, and it's done on the backs of the American taxpayer, right? Through these programs. And like I said, I'm not against all of these programs, but I am against the abuse. And I think it would be great to fix the system where we didn't have to have all of these socialist programs. That's what they are. It's socialism.
Well, to throw in a positive note, Brooke Rollins has announced like over the last week she's done good things, I guess I should say. She's taken some of the most extreme cases. Like if Joe Biden was still in there, we would still have hundreds of thousands of dollars going to trans farmers in San
Correct.
Francisco or whatever, like or studying the menstrual cycle of transgender men,
Correct.
or she comes out with these videos where she talks about the good things that they are doing. They are cutting the most insane money, I guess, first. But all right, straw season, straw season in Texas. You go buy all those rule. You got a bunch of hat rules, and you're gonna make a little TikTok about your. Here's
I
when
do
you.
not. I do not. I don't wear a straw in the wintertime, although I want to because I love straw hats. A felt hat kind of hurts my head a little bit, but I wear a felt hat just to keep my head warm. But as soon as I can put that straw on, I do
It
because
feels
it
kind of nice.
it feels light and nice, and I love it.
Here's my hat rules. Rules are made for rule followers.
There you go.
Cowboys aren't rule followers. Anybody tells you, wear what you want when you feel like it. Tell everybody else to go to
Well,
hell that
I
don't like it.
honestly I do have some rules about handling hats, right?
Well, yeah, my
I
hats.
mean, don't touch another man's hat. I've had to get all over my son for when he wears, which is not often, but he wears a cap pretty often. The kids at school flip it off. And I said, if I see that one more time to him, if you let them do that one more time, we're going to have a few problems at home. And so he has learned to start protecting his hat a little bit. I believe in not setting your hat on uh, on I believe in setting it on the crown. So just take care of your hat. Don't put it on the dash of your pickup where it gets hot and gets ill shaped. Don't put it in the back seat. Put it on your head. Wear the thing.
Take your headrest. You got your headrest off?
I have it lifted up where I goes under it.
Hmm. Some people, I've seen guys take them out. What was I gonna say? Can't remember. Anyway, Lonesome History,
Let's do it.
the Longhorns. I
Yeah.
was thinking like, how many? At what point are we gonna run out of stuff? But this one should have been. This is, as far as I'm, one of the greatest books. If you want to know the history of the cattle industry, I would say, I mean, you're going to read one book, I would say this is your book. But I guess to go back, what got me onto this, the Dale Brisby video, Catching Wild Cattle. I told Shad we had to watch that and we would talk about it. And it's so good. It's better than I thought it
It's
would be.
good.
It,
It's Awesome.
And it is what I thought it would. I mean, I'm familiar with it enough, but if you're not familiar with what guys do to catch wild cattle in the mountains of Arizona, he was in Arizona. They do a lot in New Mexico too, and a lot of it is Indian, different tribes. There was a guy on YouTube. He ended up dying from cancer, which was sad, but and I watched it all the time. I think it was Apache Cowboy. It was his YouTube handle, and he would just wear a GoPro and just go as fast as he could through these rocks and stuff. And I mean, he went a lot faster than Dale Brisby did, but I mean, you can't watch that and not be pretty impressed with Dale Brisby. He jumping on that cow right out of the gate.
Yeah, it's an hour and 44 minutes of some of the
Yeah.
best watching. You'll I couldn't get my eyes off of it. And I got to give credit to old Dale Brisby. He got right in there
Yeah. He
and
missed
went
one and
after
he was
it.
like, I'm not letting it go. Jumped off
Well,
his horse and bulldogged the sucker down.
but I'll tell you one thing, those horses they riding are tough.
Oh
I mean,
man.
tough. I mean,
That
he
was
was
my
out of a
first, that was my first thought. My horse would be done in 15 minutes.
oh, my horse wouldn't have made it. Yeah. Yeah.
And I'd probably been done in 10. So,
Well, once I'd noticed Dale was going through the cactus. There's lots of
oh
cactus and
man.
different, and he roped it, or maybe he tackled or bulldog that cow. But anyway, when he got up, he had these stickers through his shaps and sticking in his arm and bleeding. And I'm like, oh my gosh, those a prickly pear cactus hurts bad. I know
Yeah.
that. I fell off in one or two. But those cactus, those cholla, we call them a walking stick cholla where I come from, and they just kind of gravitate to you. And I mean, boom, they go in and they go. You got to have pliers to get some of that stuff out. So I
Yeah.
applaud
And
him
that's
for
the other
doing
thing.
that.
They're out in the middle of nowhere. They don't
I
have,
mean, did you see that truck about turn over?
oh my gosh. And the tire popped?
Yeah, the tire
I
popped.
thought
I
for
couldn't
sure.
have done it.
Oh, I know. That's the other thing. Derek Begay. I mean,
Oh, he's a
holy
cowboy.
smokes. Yeah, I
Derek
mean,
Begay and
and
them.
that's the other thing I thought about. They go out. I don't think I could. I mean, I definitely couldn't do it like those kids were doing it. But that's the thing. When they were talking about they learn how to do it when they're 7. They start
Yeah.
catching their wild cattle. And I raced motocross for a while, and I started when I was like 18. But then you would see these kids, no fear, just going crazy. And if you're gonna be good at something, it's the same one. I follow like F1 cars, and that's the same thing. They all starting when they're 5 and it like does something in your brain where you just don't fear it, you just
Yep.
learn it, and it's just what you do. And then when you become an adult and you see that, it's just like all these thoughts are rolling through your head. But if you've done it till you're 7, since you're 7, then you
I
just
know,
do
but
it.
I was watching that with my son. My son is 9. And I was watching it, and Beatty seen them little boys on there, and he's like, "Are those little boys?" And I said, "Yeah, they're tough." He says, "Oh my gosh, I couldn't do that." But one of the greatest things about that whole video I watched, Jim, there was some real magic in that. And about 3/4 of the way through, when Dale Brisby got tied onto that cow, and then they had um, the what is it
Drone,
the drone in the air, and they were playing music with that while he took that cow
he's leading it
back to
out.
the
Yeah.
trailer. There was a marriage there of, I hate to be weird about this, call it spirituality, but it kind of gave me that feeling there, the dance that
Hmm.
this cowboy and this horse and this cow all came together. I mean, that cow was leading. He was beat. He knew it, and he was leading, and there was just something so beautiful in that video about that. Oh, I love that.
Yeah, it is neat. And that's the I had to find an hour and 44 minutes and up staying up till almost midnight to get her watch, but
Yeah, I got it done at 12:30.
yeah, I know, but I wasn't gonna quit. So, I mean, it was that good, and at the end of it, it was just yeah, that good. It was, edge of your seat almost the whole way through. It was really
It
cool.
really was. Those little
Um,
what are they? Are they Navajo or Apache Indians?
and they're Navajo.
Navajo.
Yeah,
Well, that's Apache Indian country, and so I guess what I wanted to know that we didn't find out is,
yeah,
once you get that many cattle, who does that money go to when you
right.
sell those cattle,
That's
right?
what I wondered too. And in that like that group, are you getting paid, or are you just in there for fun, or
Yeah.
there's a lot of info. I mean, I'm sure he'll probably talk about it on a he does his podcast and stuff. But yeah, that's what I wonder too, because on that I brought out this book, The Longhorns, because um, that's what it reminded me of. And you talk about that scene of him leading that out, like that is the exact same thing they have done for 100 years,
I know.
or 150 now. Well,
I know.
almost 200, I would say. If you get into this book, they kind of did the same thing, and back then they called it Mavericking. So in
Yep.
this book, there's a chapter called Mavericks and Maverickers, Mavericking, something like that, because they talked about Mavericks in that Dale Brisby deal, and I got into how it was called. Dang it, I lost my spot. Oh, there it is. I got into how where that word comes from, Maverick, because you hear it everywhere now. But in here it says breaks it down. Charlie Siringo, who remember that chair I showed you last week, that Longhorn chair? I named that chair Charlie Siringo. I named it
Uh,
the Siringo chair
all right.
after Charlie Siringo, who mavericked on the Texas coast and in 1885 published the first cowboy autobiography known, first cowboy autobiography known. He elaborates on how Samuel Maverick, being a chicken-head old rooster, wouldn't brand or earmark any of his cattle. All his neighbors branded theirs and his too. Nevertheless, the old rooster went on claiming everything that wore slick ears. And at first people said, "Yonder goes one of Mr. Maverick's animals." And then upon seeing any unbranded animal anywhere, they got to saying, "Yonder goes a Maverick." So that's how he explained it. And then,
Yeah.
so this is by J. Frank Dobie. And Dobie, um, well, he grew up, I think his ancestors were, or like his dad and his uncles were cattle drive guys. And he
Okay.
became a professor at University of Texas. So he got into really digging into the truth of the, and there he writes all the myths of where the Maverick term came from. But he said, and one of the myths was that there was an island with cattle on it, and the guy was
Okay.
just like, I don't need to brand my cattle. And then a storm came, and the tide got real low at one point, and all the cattle came off and into inland, and then he claimed all the unbranded cattle for his.
Oh, well,
That was what, but
that's interesting.
that's not the truth. The truth is there was an island, and Samuel Maverick, a lawyer, one of the signers of the Texas Declaration of Independence against Mexico, and an extensive speculator in lands, was the leading English-speaking citizen of San Antonio in 1842 when an invading Mexican army captured him and took him prisoner in Mexico City, where he was then released. So that was 1842. And then in 1845, he was living temporarily at Decro's Point on Matagorda Bay, and his neighbor owed him 1,200 bucks, and persuaded Maverick to take 400 head of cattle running on Matagorda Island in cancellation of the debt. Maverick did not want the cattle. He knew almost nothing about the cattle and had no ambition to learn. Soon after receiving them, he left the 400 head thus forced upon him, along with a few ponies, under the care of a black family, nominally slave, but essentially free. And then it says, especially free to be shiftless. Dobie is not the most politically correct when he starts
Correct.
talking about race. Today he would be known as a racist, but but that's what you got to remember when you read these books. Like they come from a time where people were just kind of racist.
Yeah.
Um, but the story goes on to they were in charge of these cattle. They were on Matagorda Island, and they didn't brand. They branded some, but not all of them. And a few of them started getting across, swimming across to the mainland, and then eventually they brought the whole herd over to the mainland, and still they weren't branding their calves, and so it said, here Mavericks cattle could roam free as any other creatures of nature. Oh, this is talking about the island. They could scatter not only up and down Long Island, but could, if the notion struck them, wade across to the mainland when the tide was low and the wind was blowing the water out of the bay. Um, Perhaps some of them, like deer now, now and then pass to the mainland. And so that's where, and then it said, the family with the herd continued to be the official caretakers. They became energetic enough to brand about a third of the calves. Owners of other cattle in the country were keeping their own calves branded up, and were hunting down older unclaimed animals. Meaning, so back then, this was not thought of stealing. It was not stealing. It was the custom of the range at the time. There was comparatively little stealing of cattle before the Civil War. All calves caught in the cow hunts. So if you caught a calf with the cow, they were branded in the brands of their mothers. So the guys that caught them, if they were honest, he's saying that most of them back then were, it said whether the branders knew the owner of the cow or not. Old time cowman was a patriarch, but the range has always been matriarchal. Unbranded cattle of a year old and up went to whoever caught them. So once the calves weaned themselves and they were just free, then you could just brand whatever cattle you caught. And the way they did it, if you continue to read this book, exactly how Dale Brisby and Derek Begay did it in that
Yeah.
movie is they would run through the brush, rope them, tie them to a tree, leave them for a day or two, and let them get worn out enough to where they
Yep.
could lead them. But
And
there's
let
other
them.
stories in this book, and he writes another book called Cow People,
Yeah.
where they set up traps and they're able to pin some somehow. That's what I wondered about when they were running them cows if they've ever tried to pin them. And I think he might have said something about how they've tried in the past and couldn't. You got Cow People.
Tell people.
It's a must read if you're into this kind of stuff. But to talk about the actual cow hunts, the wildest one that I read here was General Dodge, which is General Irving Dodge, which I believe Dodge City was named after. No, no, Dodge City was not named after that. It was Grenville Dodge. Dodge City was named after. Anyway, there was a General Dodge. He relates the incident of a wild bull hunt that a doctor visiting an army post in Texas about 1850 had reason to remember. A bull the doctor had wounded turned on him and was winning the race across a small opening when an army officer dashed up on a fine American horse and fired his pistol at the bull. Instantly, the brute wheeled to attack the new foe. The big American horse, too slow in turning, was met in full in the side by the bull's horns. Both horse and rider were lifted for one instant into the air and came down in a heap together. The horse was dead without a struggle, one horn being completely through his body, the other caught in the bones of his chest. One
Mm.
leg of the rider was between the horns of the bull, pinned
Oh,
fast between his head and the body of the horse. So the horse was dead, two horns through him. The guy's leg was in between the horns, and when heaped together, the horse's body was on the bull's head, fastening it to the ground. So the bull couldn't get up because it had a big horse on
dad
its head.
gum.
And the rider was laying on the bull's back. The whole hunting party soon assembled. They were afraid to shoot the bull lest his struggles might further injure the man pinned to him. At last, the bull's jugular vein was opened, and he slowly bled to death. His horns were then cut off, and the horse lifted off, and the now nearly dead man carried in a leader to the post.
How did they cut his horns off?
How would you like? Yeah, that's the other thing. They weren't carrying saws back then, probably like those guys were.
One time, my dad used to my dad leased a lot of country, had a lot of country leased, and he had a really nice ranch up at Dillon, Colorado, which is up in the high country, and it was right on the Blue River. And I mean, I remember going up there, and us kids helped him, but he had at least long before I was born, and he told me one time he had this bull that just kept getting in on these heifers, and he roped that bull going up the mountain one day, and then that bull pulled him back down the mountain. But he said he tied that bull to a tree right there where today the there's an outlet mall right there. And he last time we was over there, which has been years ago, he said, see where that I think it was a Tommy Hilfiger store. He says, see where that Tommy Hilfiger store is? I said, yeah. And he said, there's a big old tree. And I tied a bull to that tree right there where that store is. And I said, well, what'd you do that for? And he said, well, I left him for a day and then I let him back out of there. And he said he led like a little puppy.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
His head
And
was
that's the
sore.
thing. What'd you think about all? Did it come to mind like I wonder what the animal rights nuts will think of this?
Yeah.
Because I'm
Oh
sure
yeah.
they'll get to see it. I mean, somebody's gonna send it to them and
Oh
whatever.
yeah. I mean, it is what it is. I mean,
I mean, but the thing is, you got to catch those cattle and get them out of there at some point. They were talking
well, the
about,
animal rights people don't want them on the land, so how do they want us to get them off the land?
yeah, and there's one way. There's really just one way.
Oh yeah.
And sawing them horns off doesn't hurt them. They do bleed, but there's just a little vein in there and it closes
Um,
up.
our friend Cash Caruth does the
Yeah,
same
I
thing
thought that too.
in New Mexico. Yeah.
He's invited me out, and I always told him I was like, I don't think I'm tough enough to ride
Yeah,
around with you
I'm
guys.
not tough enough for Cash. That Cash and his boys are good hands and
Yeah,
they
and
are
Ryan,
tough.
Ryan too.
And
They both.
Ryan,
You can
yep,
just tell by looking at them.
yep,
There's some.
yep,
They've seen their share of rough country.
yep. You're
Um,
exactly right.
but
Speaking of
you've
that,
never caught wild cattle, have you ever had to ride through brush like that anywhere?
well, yeah, I've rode through mesquite brushes thicker than that a lot.
Yeah, but well, I guess.
You got to be ready to open up and rope those cattle in mesquite country. But where I come from, I'm from the plains.
Yeah,
I mean, I
it's
don't.
flat,
There's,
right?
it's flat. The only thing you have to worry about is badger holes, gopher holes, prairie dog holes. You
Yeah,
know,
out there it was everything around you.
it
You
was
had to worry
everything.
about.
I'm not that tough. I don't think I was ever that tough. I could go out there and tail them down for them when they got them rope. I don't think I have a horse that I've ever owned, maybe one or two, that were tough enough to go to handle those rocks. Those
Oh,
horses are special.
yeah.
They're born and raised in that country and they can handle that unevenness. My horses, shoot, they couldn't handle that
Oh man.
unevenness.
Yeah, and mine would be on his back and I'd be under him. And that's the other thing. You go down there and it's just nothing but rocks and stickers like everywhere.
Well, if
And
you've
that
seen that one that
yeah,
one
that kid
bull, that
that
one bull before they caught him was grazing and it was right at the base of a tree.
yeah.
That's why they say it takes 200 acres for a cow out there, and that's the truth. But it
Yeah.
was neat. It was really neat. I need to write a poem about that. That was cool.
Yeah. And Dale's your neighbor. You ever talk to him?
I've never met Dale
You've
Brisby,
never
and
even
he
seen
is
him?
my neighbor. He is my neighbor.
He goes to your sale barn. I recognize that sale barn
Yeah,
in one
he
of his
goes to the
videos.
Graham sale barn a lot, and I know his sister and his brother-in-law.
Yeah.
I hear nothing but good things about those people.
Yeah. I mean, it's people will be, he gets his share of jealous hate, I feel like, but I love
Oh,
his
I'm sure.
videos and that one, but it's almost like, oh, that was awesome. I wish you'd make more, but you can't, you can only make so much of that.
Oh yeah.
You
Well, you
could
got to
tell
give him.
he was pretty happy to be out of there once he was out.
I think so. I mean, I'm sure. What is his ranch called? Winnebago. I'm
Yeah.
sure Winnebago is probably 300 acres. I don't know, but it ain't. It ain't at 300,000
Yeah.
or
I mean, that's what
3 million.
they kept saying. This ain't Texas anymore.
This ain't
That
Texas
was,
anymore.
that was
I got
rough
to give
country. And
Dale Brisby a little credit though, because I didn't know I've never known those people, but he has created a marketing empire there. Whether I don't know how he makes his money, other than I've heard he makes a lot of money
t-shirts.
selling product.
Well, I'm
Uh,
how many miles away? I mean, I went to the county fair. There's tons of kids, rodeo time hats,
yeah,
rodeo time
all
shirts.
over, all over.
Yeah, and
Wonder
this
if he,
ain't exactly cowboy country, so
yeah,
every FFA kid I think is all in on rodeo time.
yep, yeah.
Anyway, I had one last sentence that describes what they thought of that video, I guess.
All
It says,
right,
I do not believe any kind of riding will pump virtue into a man like that in the pursuit of a wild, strong, mighty horned cattle, plunging for liberty or just walking like phalanxes towards destiny, phalanxes of destiny towards cattle. That's J. Frank Dobie.
it's good stuff.
All right, go to lonesomelands.com, click subscribe if you want us to keep doing this and want to support what we're doing. Go to Meitler Cattle. I'm going to have links in all of the description, social media posts, all that stuff. I'm going to have links to their sale catalog and their website. Go to their sale, April 12th. Buy you some cattle.
That's right.
What else?
continue our fight for liberty and freedom. Don't forget the Maude
Yeah,
family.
share this, share what you can about the Maude family and try to get it to as many people as you can because this should be the biggest story in the country and it's kind of up to us to make it that way. And
Yep.
we could do
Agree.
it. We could do it, Chad.
You can do it, American.